Yo, I want to talk about Duskmourn, finally! And just in time too, because even though it's only been out like a month, it's already time to move on to yet another standard set, Foundations. If I have my dates correct, pre-release is this weekend and the full set comes out next week on the 15th of November. Duskmourn released on the 27th of September. That's what, a month and a half between set releases? So RIP Duskmourn, I didn't even get a chance to cover you when you first released, and you're already dead in terms of discourse and hype because we don't have time to talk about you anymore. WotC have shiny new things to show off like all these Marvel cards. I cannot be the only one that finds this rate of reveals and releases truly, genuinely exhausting. And that's not even factoring in all the other drama going on around the game, like the changes to Commander that have been happening. Check this video of mine if you'd like to know more. But yeah, when Duskmourn was first released, I was swamped so couldn't cover it. Which is a shame, because I had maybe 3-ish video ideas on the set. 3 angles I'd like to have explored and talked about. The first of which would have been exploring the horror of Duskmourn. There's been a lot of focus on the set's 80s retro aesthetic and how people didn't quite feel it gelled with the traditional fantasy setting of Magic. Others pointed out how the Duskmourn described in the lore and world building looked and felt vastly different from the Duskmourn depicted in the cards. And others again highlighted how those card depictions of the world and setting seemed to not even be consistent from card to card to card, as each implied different and maybe even conflicting tones and themes. Is Duskmourn a fun haunted house ride? Is Duskmourn a somber tragedy due to the triumph of inevitable evil? Is it just surface level memes and movie references worthy of no more thought than hey, look it's fucking human centipede on a card lol? Well, to me, the biggest question would be, is it scary? It's meant to be a horror set, I think, and while I'm not a fan of a lot of its other choices, Duskmourn would go a long way to winning me over if it nails the horror. And the best way to convey horror, in my opinion, is in its depiction of its point of view everyman characters. When I look at a card featuring someone the audience could potentially see themselves in, does the horror aspect succeed because I think, oh wow, that would be scary if it were me? Or do I think, something else, meaning the horror fails because the audience surrogates don't seem horrified? And if they're not scared, why should I be? The second video idea I had was asking the question, is Duskmourn a Commander set in disguise? Highlighting a concern that many players have expressed that sets designed for one format still include cards aimed at another, which is often to the detriment of that initial format. Modern Horizons 3 is the best example that I can think of with its Commander Precons and Nardu, which they're on record as saying was a mistake by the way, but even head designer Mark Rosewater has acknowledged the issue. For example in this post, State of Design 2024, link in the description, where he says on lessons learned from Thunder Junction that the set had no justification for all the legendary creatures. It was a standard set and all those multicoloured legendaries, with their unique mechanics that don't tie into the rest of the set, would be fine in Commander but are usually bad pulls in a draft environment for instance. Side note, back to those Thunder Junction lessons, he also pointed out here the plane felt paper thin and the tone felt too jokey, which are 2 more accusations I've heard levied against Duskmourn that I'd have liked to have explored. But, as to the too many legendaries issue, Mark Rosewater has also been answering comments like this on his Tumblr, Bloggertog, where he says, we are consciously trying to lower legendary creatures in Premier sets, because according to this post, the players have communicated that they'd prefer less. Which according to this post, where he says, we've been talking about lowering the average of legendary creatures in Magic IP sets, means this is an issue they've known about for a while because he gave that reply back in July of 2023. Link in the description for all of those posts as well. And I know what some of you will say. Sets take years to design. They don't have time to implement the lessons they've learned in Thunder Junction into Duskmourn. But I call shenanigans on that argument because even Thunder Junction itself managed to release with last minute changes due to the lessons they'd learned from Aftermath epilogue boosters. And at the time it looked like that situation took them by complete surprise. Whereas the issue of too many cards aimed at Commander included in non-Commander sets is something they've been talking about for years apparently. So they are able to make last minute changes if needed. And in fairness, perhaps they've already done exactly that. In fact, this initial question I showed earlier is actually about how it already appears they've lowered the amount of legendaries for Duskmourn. So good! But I'd still like to investigate that myself, because I'd still be interested to see if they've done enough to not make the set feel like yet another Commander set in disguise. Lastly, my third video idea was basically just discussing the release schedule and pointing out how Duskmourn is wedged so closely between both Bloomburrow's release date and that of the upcoming Foundations, which if you remember, I sort of did at the beginning of this video. Which finally leads us to today, where I'm going to attempt to cram all 3 of those concepts into one. So today I'd like to ask, was the horror setting a success? Is it full of Commander cards? And how did the set do in retrospect for its less than 2-month lifespan? And if we're going to have a loose chat about all those disparate topics, I thought the best way to do it would be via a 12-pack Commander Scramble. That'll give us a chance to discuss some mechanics, judge how scary the cards are, and see if we can make a functional Commander deck. All 3 birds with 1 stone. If you're unfamiliar with a Commander Scramble, the game is simple. Open 12 packs, and not including basic lands, see if we can pull enough cards for a complete and legal Commander deck. We're going to use play boosters to do it, which, as I understand, can include cards from Duskmourn and the special guest list. And good news, because none of those potential cards in these boosters are banned in Commander, which means we can use whatever we pull here today to build our deck. However, the challenge comes in with the numbers. Commander is a singleton format with decks that require 100 cards. Because we don't know what kind of deck we're going to build yet, 37 of those 100 we're going to assume are lands, because that's a decent average number of lands for any Commander deck, and technically these lands could all just be basics, so we're not really interested in any land cards that we get from these packs. They'll be a nice bonus, but whatever. So this means that we need 63 unique non-land cards to make up this deck. Pulling 2 copies of the same card is often good for draft, but it'll be bad for us here due to the singleton nature of the format. Now, the chance of us pulling 63 unique cards of any one colour from 12 packs is very improbable, potentially impossible. So if we assume our deck is 2 colour and don't include our commander, that means we need to pull 31-ish unique cards of each colour to make the deck. Less when you factor in colourless and multicolour cards. Doable, but really what we're hoping for is to pull at least a 3-colour commander, because that works out to only be about 20-ish unique cards of each colour, again not factoring in colourless and multicolour. And those numbers are a bit more achievable here. Will a deck with literally every card from at least 2 colours across 12 packs be a good commander deck? Probably not, but will it be legal? Yes, if we can do it. And the first step in discovering if we can is finding our commander, which for our best chance of success will have to be one of these 10 cards, who, unless I've missed any, are all the cards from the set that can be the commander for a 2 or more colour deck. If we're lucky, we'll find Winter Misanthropic Guides who can command a 3-colour deck, and if we're exceptionally lucky, we'll find Marina Vendril who can be the commander of a 5-colour deck, which would mean with her, we'd be able to add literally every card that we pull, making our chances of building a full deck almost guaranteed. Not totally guaranteed, however, because remember, Commander is a singleton format. The 100 cards do need to be unique, so if we pull too many multiple copies of the same card, then we still might fail, regardless of whether there's a 5-colour commander in one of our 12 packs or not. And speaking of packs, this booster box is where we'll be getting the ones that we'll open up today, which if you've watched any of my previous pack opening videos, you may know what I'm about to say, but this box was very kindly provided by, I guess, friend of the channel, Zatu Games. Not a sponsor, as I've said in the past, I have no kind of agreement with them, no obligation to them, and in fact, you may remember last time I didn't even thank or credit them because I was interested to see if they'd still send another box even if I didn't shout them out at all. And it appears they have. So okay, thank you Zatu, very kind. I'll leave a link to their website in the description, but again, not an affiliate link. I don't work with or for them. I think they might just be cool. They're a UK store, but it appears they ship internationally and sell all sorts of things like, for instance, this board game Coup, which I've played and is amazing. So I guess check them out if you're interested. But I want to stress, I shout them out as a thank you, mostly to be polite, because again, not a sponsor and supporting them doesn't support me. If you would like to support me, then come check out my Patreon, also linked in the description. I have many tiers with many rewards, including things like early access to audio-only versions of these episodes that you can listen to as a podcast, weekly opinion polls where we discuss interesting aspects of the game, and a monthly behind-the-scenes blog keeping you updated on everything that's happening with the channel. Most tiers also include the option to have your name credited on screen at the end of my videos too. So, if you'd like to support me, if you'd like to join my community, and if you find value in my videos, then come check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. Thank you. Right, let me call my assistant. Mr. Hands, are you there? Perfect. And let's open up some packs and... Wait, what does that say? Oh my god, you graduated? Congratulations, oh wow, that's huge. Wait, does that make you Dr. Hands now? Bloody hell mate, that's awesome. Well done. Oh, I bet you're thrilled. Congratulations again. Crikey. Well, what do you say, Dr. Hands? Shall we open up some packs? Well, let's zoom in then. Right, so I see you've opened the box already. Good stuff. And there at the bottom is the insert with the draft archetypes on it. I don't know that we'll need that, but we might use it later depending on which, if any, commanders that we find. But for now, let's start by opening Pack 1. As usual, Dr. Hands has laid them out in the order that he's opened them. On the left we have our commons. This is another common with a chance of being a special guest card. Then our uncommons, our wild card, our rare or mythic, our land, our foil, and our token. And let's start by giving a quick eye over Cryptid Inspector and Entity Tracker here, because they're two examples of point of view characters that will help set a tone and inform us as the audience as to what emotion we're supposed to be feeling. And yes, art is subjective. I'm neither an artist nor an art critic, so I'm not going to break these images down and tell you what they mean or how you're supposed to feel. Instead, what I think I'm going to do is tell you how looking at them makes me feel, and whether I think they do a good job of establishing the horror of the plane. I want to look past the clothing and hairstyle choices and the god-awful Game Boyification of the plane's technology, and just look at the people and the emotions they're trying to convey. Are they scared? Am I supposed to be scared for them? I believe this is supposed to be a horror set, so does the horror succeed? If you want to join me in this, please feel free to comment below, because to me, I'd say with these two, kinda? Cryptid Inspector more so, but even there I'd say that elf looks more uncomfortable than horrified. If these were stills from a movie, I'd expect that movie to be an action suspense thriller more than a horror. Both of them look like they're more likely to wink to camera and say, well that just happened, than actually scream in terror, so However, as for the mechanics of the set, the spotlight card for this pack is Surgical Suite / Hospital Room for being our first card with the new enchantment subtype, Room. An interesting design space that makes me think of two things. First, I wonder if a permanent type that can be in play with one of, both of, or neither of its two abilities currently active is going to add so much cognitive load to the players that they end up not being that much fun to play with. Time will tell. And secondly, I think seeing this concept work as an enchantment subtype makes me once again question why battles had to be their own card type, because thematically I don't see much difference between a battle and a room. Pack 2. Oh my lord, we hit the jackpot. But before we get to that, let's look at Shrewd Storyteller and Defiant Survivor and ask, is this selling the horror? And no? Not even slightly, right? This is an old person in a comfortable chair reading a book, and this is a person who looks like they're an action hero. Again, it doesn't matter how scary the monsters are in isolation if the everyman audience stand-in characters are demonstrating that there's nothing to fear. Anyway, enough about those, because the spotlight card for this pack is Marina Vendrell, a potential commander for our deck, and the only 5-colour one in the whole set. I mean, this means that we've basically done it, and we've still got 10 packs to go. The only possible reason that our commander scramble could fail now is if we only open up doubles of cards that we've already found. Unlikely, but still possible, so let's see. Pack 3. Speaking of doubles, we've actually got quite a few here already, as I've certainly seen a bunch of these cards in the first 2 packs. But we have another of the plane's inhabitants to look at in Cautious Survivor. And does this elf look scared? I'd say a bit beat up, but not really scared. That expression is more confused than afraid, right? Like Innistrad is another of Magic's horror sayings, and when I think about the people depicted on that plane, they're all either evil, insane, or both, like we see on Laboratory Maniac here, ground down religious fanatics clutching at a chance of survival, like with Thalia, or genuinely scared, miserable, or basically fucked, like with Doomed Dissenter. Even the characters that are fighting back, like Hamlet Captain, still evoke a notion that they know their untimely death is a matter of when and not if, which in itself is horrifying as we as the audience are invited to imagine what we'd feel like in that same situation. Is there horror in what Cautious Survivor invites us to feel? If there is, I don't think I feel it, and that's an issue because I think if the set had nailed the horror, it would have helped more people like me to overcome some of the other gripes we had with the set from a flavour perspective. For instance, our spotlight card for the pack is Orphans of the Wheat, a prime example. Remember one of Mark Rosewater's lessons from Thunder Junction? Magic normally takes its setting very seriously, and the jokes pulled the tone of the whole set in a direction that made it feel like we didn't care about the setting, and thus you the player shouldn't care either. Well, I'd like to add that the issue wasn't just the jokes, but the blatant references and memes too. Orphans of the Wheat, do you get it? Like Children of the Corn, get it? Pack 4. I don't think any of these cards are depicting audience stand-ins, so I'll just jump straight to the spotlight card, which is obviously Tyvar the Pummeler. I don't have anything particularly insightful to say other than I do like this all art. I don't think I could say for certainty what's going on in this image, but I like the colour scheme, that's for sure. Duskmourn gives me such mixed feelings because even though I have things to complain about, I still think some of the cards are bangers. Pack 5. Again, no new survivors to look at. Maybe a push break down the door here, but that's clearly a reference to The Shining, and I think we're supposed to be afraid of them, not for them, which the fact I'm not entirely sure in itself isn't a great sign. So looking at the mechanics instead, our spotlight card for the pack is Vicious Clown. Mostly because this set is the first time we've seen clowns as a creature type outside of an unset. which I was unsure of at first, but then thinking about it, if soldiers, clerics and pirates can be creature types, then sure, why not clowns too? I'm okay with this. Pack 6. Now we're talking, because in this pack we have Unwilling Vessel, and this is how it's done. That dude does not look like he's having a good time. The horror is really being sold here, even with his dumb Goonies handheld belt radio thing. Yes. The spotlight card for this pack, however, is Fear of Surveillance, one of the many new nightmare creature types introduced in this set. I actually think if it were me, I'd have made Fear a distinct creature type in and of itself, but these Fear embodiments kind of rule, in both concept and in execution. I do not want to see them show up in other sets though. Fear made manifest is one of the most unique elements of Duskmourn, and I think make the setting more special for their inclusion. In the future, when I look back on Duskmourn, it will be these fears that come to mind, and I want to save the printing of the next batch of new fears as a special treat for the next time we return to the plane. Pack 7. We have some new inhabitants to look at in the forms of Optimistic Scavenger and Toby, Beastie Befriender. And I wish these were more of last pack's Unwilling Vessel, because both of these cards tell me that actually, everything's fine. Toby's got a big friend, he's literally got nothing to fear, and Optimistic Scavenger looks more like they're doing their weekly shop than fighting for survival. And looking at these make me honestly think maybe I was wrong and Duskmourn isn't supposed to be a horror set, because our spotlight card for the pack is Enduring Innocence. It's a sheep glimmer, it's cute, but I don't understand why it's here, and I don't mean in a narrative sense. I mean more, what is the world building concept for this? Because I thought it was like 80s retro slasher horror movies, so why add a happy glowing sheep to the set? I don't get what we're going for here. What vibe are we trying to capture and evoke? Maybe if we still had 3 set blocks, these could have been introduced in a follow-up expansion to add a sense of relief after all the dread. I'm thinking similar to the 3-act story structure of Innistrad's Dark Ascension into Avacyn Restored. Like the arrival of Glimmers could have been a, and finally Hope returns to the plane narrative conclusion to a 3-part story arc. I mean, I like the card, but including it here just makes me scratch my head. Pack 8. Okay, this pack is a winner, because we have 4 cards to look at. First up is Enter the Enigma and House Cartographer, and be real, what message do these cards send outside of how fun it would be to play with portals? But our next 2 cards, Murder and Norin Swift Survivalist, I think nail what I expected the tone to be. Yes, Murder is a reference to Psycho, but it's subtle. It's not called something dumb like shower stabbing or knife to meet you. And returning character Norin is a coward, but that fear works here. Look at the framing, look at the creature in the background. You did it, Watsy. This is horror. Fear evoked, bravo. Our spotlight card, however, is Anthropede, because I want to take a moment, look at it, and ask a question. It's got reach, and it can destroy a room. What does that tell us? It's an insect, its flavour text is serious enough, and its really evocative art depicts a gribbly skeletal insectoid monster. So, why is it called Anthropede? Anthro to mean human, humanoid, or human-like. Look at the card. Does that description match any aspect of this creature? Or is it just called Anthropede because for some reason when you saw it, Watsy wanted you to think of human centipede? Just call it Murderpede. It's still a pun, but at least someone's immersion isn't being intentionally broken by looking at it. Why diminish this card by making it a weak reference to a movie? Pack 9. With the last pack they took me low, with this pack they're taking me high. Stalked Researcher is nailing it. I don't even know what that weird radio light thing is, but it seems to be failing and that's good. Unreliable equipment adds to a sense of dread and that's good horror. Speaking of dread, our spotlight card for the pack is Manifest Dread. Because if you don't know, Manifest Dread is also the name of a keyword action introduced in the set. And interestingly, the only 2 words of rules text on Manifest Dread are Manifest Dread, making it the first card in the game whose name matches its rules text. And I just think that's neat. Pack 10. Once again, we've got another group of cards to look at, but the tone is all over the place here. The people in Monstrous Emergence and Unnerving Grasp are what I would expect from a horror set, but Friendly Ghost and Lionheart Glimmer certainly are not. Maybe I'm just not getting it. Let me know in the comments below what Duskmourn is supposed to be, because I look at cards like Most Valuable Slayer, see it's a pun, see that it depicts a fearless badass, and I just don't know what we're doing here. The spotlight card for the pack, however, is Peer Past the Veil, and whether I get it or not, I have to admit some of the art treatments are really, really nice. I think it might be the colouring, Maybe I'm just a fan of these two-tone arts like we saw with Tyvar. Any which way, I like it, big fan. Pack 11. Apparently there's a lot I don't understand today because maybe someone can explain this to me too. Why is this core the saviour of the small? Is that slang for children? Do people call their kids the smalls? Maybe it's a cultural thing, but I get some real heckin' doggo vibes off of this card. And I'm just not sure how I'm supposed to feel about this core if I can imagine them unironically tweeting at Elon Musk with, "Thou'st have offered another excellent meme, my lord." Anyway, our spotlight card for the pack is Bale Merc Leech, because it's a good example of one of the set's new mechanics, Eerie, which cares about enchantments. I would say Eerie is a strictly better version of Theros' Constellation mechanic, but Constellation appeared much more frequently on enchantment creatures, meaning unlike Eerie, it was far more likely to trigger itself when you play it. And while Eerie does have the benefit of triggering when you unlock a room, unlike Constellation, I'm not sure how much of an actual benefit that will be given how few room cards there are in the game at this point. So while this new mechanic is better, I'd say only by a little, but I do appreciate this kind of design space being explored. Pack 12. Our last pack, and only one new inhabitant to look at, so let's go ahead and make our spotlight card, Gremlin Tamer. I wouldn't say the person depicted is expressing terror, but I would say they were expressing caution, which can help to build a sense of tension, so in terms of the horror aspect I'd give this card a pass. And while many may feel it's a meme referencing the movie Gremlins, I'm not sure I'd agree. Whether intentional or not, it seems to me just to be a reference to the real-world creatures of Gremlins. And I know, a lot of you would say Gremlins aren't real, but you try telling that to the World War II Royal Air Force. And that's it. That's all 12 packs. And normally by this point, I'd have already had Dr. Hands count up the cards we've opened a few times to figure out the likelihood of building a commander deck as we go. But, thanks to this little 5-colour beauty in pack 2, I was pretty confident we have it in the bag. So, Dr. Hands, would you now please count up and organise all of our cards so we can see how many we've gotten? Remember everyone, we only need 63 unique cards of any colour to successfully build a commander deck. And with that in mind, Dr. Hands, please show us all of our multicolour cards. 11 in total, including our commander at the bottom there. So assuming we're running 37 basic lands, that means we're already at 48 out of 100 cards needed. Dr. Hands, show us the colourless cards please. 5. And one of those is a 5-colour mana rock too. Very nice, that brings our total to 53 out of 100 cards. So Dr. Hands, please show me white. 19 in total. Yeah, we're gonna smash this. We've got 72 out of 100 cards. Show me blue. 18 in total. That brings us to 90 out of 100 cards. Next up, show me black. Another 18 in total, which means, ding ding ding, we've made it, 108 cards out of 100. But we're not done yet, so show me red. Slightly less with only 16 in total, but that doesn't matter now as we're 124 cards deep. Next up is green. 17 in total, leaving us with a final amount of 141 cards out of 100. Meaning, thanks to our 5-colour commander, Marina Vendrell, this 12-pack commander scramble is a pass. Normally I would deck build at this point, but to be honest, 41 cards is so many to cut that I feel there's too many potential combinations of this deck using the cards that we've opened, for there to really be a right or satisfying way to do it, and I just don't think that would be fun to watch. But hey, if you want to in the comments below, then feel free to let me know how you'd have built it using what we have here. So, Duskmourn has passed the commander scramble, but back to my initial question, does that mean I think it's a commander set in disguise? Well, impressively, not really. Because if you look at the cards that we pulled that could legally be our commander, you'll see there's only 2 of them that could command a 2 or more colour deck. That's good. I think that's a healthier place for sets to be in for standard and draft. I also think fewer legendary creatures in a set makes the ones that are there feel all the more special. Especially when you get lucky like we did and pull a 5-colour one. So yeah, awesome actually. Finding this out has legitimately made me appreciate Duskmourn more. But what about exploring the horror of Duskmourn? Was the horror a success? Well, in this regard, kinda. Unwilling Vessel and Most Valued Slayer show both sides of this scale, but overall I think I found more cards that didn't convey horror, so yeah, I'm probably leaning towards a fail on this one. And finally, how did the set do in retrospect? Hard to say. I like a lot of the new creature types and mechanics, and I've had comments on other videos from people that have told me they've loved the set, but I know many others who gave it a wide berth because they just didn't like the setting and the tone. But if we're asking how the set did in retrospect given its less than 2-month lifespan, and that's a much easier question to answer. Poorly. Like every set that hasn't been given time to breathe lately. When I posed this same question in my Bloomburrow video, I had plenty of comments from people who said it felt like they blinked and it was over, and I'm going to assume the same will be true here. Personal experience? These were the first packs I saw opened. Admittedly, the news has been pretty non-stop lately, so I've barely had time for anything, but I certainly feel like Duskmourn has passed me by. I remember being taken by surprise when I found out the pre-release had been and gone, and I do this full time. That's not good. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me, and thank you once again to Zatu. Will they send me any foundations? Who knows? If they do, will WotC give us enough time to actually get a chance to play it before they want to move our attention on to the next product and then the next? Very, very unlikely. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like James Diamond, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me on my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block. Most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time.